while I'm doing the ailerons. Okay. So now I'm going to cut out the ailerons. Now, you probably remember I mentioned the other day about always having the straight edge onto the pattern so that if you slip it doesn't matter. But when you're cutting out the ailerons you don't have that luxury, because whichever way you go, and if you slip it's going to be messed up. So a lot of care needed to go straight down the straight edge. Moved a little bit. Not too drastic, I hope. Okay, so now to be sure I'm going to get these in the right. And once again I'm going to slightly around the edges while I'm putting this position on this. Okay, now that's that. So on the underside, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to take off 45 roughly with my knife. Like that. And then I'm going to sand that off. Down to the edge, put them past the edge. So we've got a nice 45-degree angle on there. I'm going to cut a bit of a relief on the edges, so that it's not going to be too tight. So we've got a little bit of a gap at this end and a little bit of a gap at that end. I'll do the same with the other one. Again, check. Round off the edges first. Again, I'm going to check that. Right, so I'll have my 45-degree angle underneath, so I'm going to turn that over. Trim that off. a little bit off the end there. So that we've got a little gap at either end of the aileron. It's far enough away from the elevator. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a hinge. There are lots of ways we could do a hinge. I guess you guys have got your own ways of doing this. This is the way I like to do it. From here, one of the cheap Hobby King irons. I set it around about halfway. Make sure it's all clean. In fact, what I'll do, I'll use a bit of isopropyl. To make sure we're all clean. Dust off. Again, I use just the clear packaging tape, and I'm going to go halfway. Like that. Try not to get any wrinkles on there. Trim off the excess. Okay, so now we've got the aileron with a bit of tape on. I'm going to drop it onto the edge there, leaving, making sure I've got a gap to the end. I'm not going to bother too much about a gap in there. It's reasonably tight. I haven't poked it real tight, but it's set up against the edge. As you can see there, I can, with the iron, I can make that a little bit more flexible. So what I'm going to do now is turn it right back on itself. Okay, looks like we're back in focus again. I don't know how much of that we saw, but I've just glued that on. I've put the tape on the top side. I'll do the same with the other one. Onto there. Keep an eye on that focus. Halfway. Okay, now what I'm going to do is turn that back on itself like that. Just put a little bit of tape on there to hold it there for the minute. going to go about, I suppose, about 3/4 of an inch onto the aileron. Again, I'm going to trim off any excess. So now I've got it about 3/4 of an inch onto the aileron there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to gradually ease it around, making sure that this edge is nice and tight. Ease it around there. And then back onto the underside of the wing. Like so. And then I'm going to use the iron. And I'm going to make sure I seal that on. Now you'll see when I do this, it really seals it onto the Depron. It's never going to move. And in fact, should you need to get this off, it's very difficult to get it off once you've ironed it on like this. Just test your iron. It's not melting the Depron, but it's certainly sealing the tape right onto the Depron itself. You can take that bit of tape off now and do the same on the top. And then by bending that down and going over that joint, it will now go up and down. And that's a very strong hinge. I use this, and have done for a long while. I use this on all my foamies, and I've never had one come adrift. I have, however, I've used foam tack hinges. I've used hot glue hinges, as a lot of guys use, and they have come adrift. In fact, I've got a model up there, because it's been sat in the top of the shed, the heat has melted the hot glue on the hinge, and the hinge has simply parted from the aileron is simply parted from the wing. So this is the way I do my hinges. I'll do the other one. Cheap and easy hinge. It's almost foolproof. No gaps on the hinge. there once again. Make sure that's level there. Just going to wrap that around, ease it around. I'm going to seal it in again. Seal it with the Depron. And seal it around the edges. See how that's quite tight to move. It sort of doesn't want to go much further than that. It will do once I get some heat on it and then press. And just get the heat on the hinge itself, on the point of the hinge. Seal it nicely around the edges. Another little trick with the iron, if you get that's a piece of Depron, so if you get a dent, see I've put quite a big dent in there with my finger, whilst it won't fetch it out completely, if you just put the iron on the Depron, it's almost gone. It's brought that dent right out, and this iron is at the point of almost melting. I can just, if you can see, that's quite a deep dent I've put in there with my thumb. I'm just going to hold the iron over that, and again, this is almost, I can feel it tacking on there. It's almost at the point of melting the Depron, but I can hold it on there for quite a while. It won't melt the Depron. So I've got the iron set. Test your iron. If your iron is too hot, it will melt the Depron. But this is just at the edge. Now, as you see, the dent is almost gone. I can't even see where it was. It's very, very good. It may be something that I'm teaching you how to suck eggs again, but that's a little tip that you may or may not know. Okay, we've got our hinges on, we've got our ailerons and our elevators. I think I've got a slightly bigger gap there between the elevator and the aileron, so I think I'm just going to trim a little out of this and make them both the same. Okay, so we've got about the same gap now between elevator and aileron on each side. I will go round and sand off the wing all the way around, but not a lot of point. I'm showing you how to sand edge wing edges, so I'm sure you know how to do that. Okay, what I'm trying to do is do all the work where I can keep this on the flat bench before I start adding control horns to the ailerons and things of this nature. And the other thing I need to do is make a pod. I'm going to make a new EDF pod so that you guys can see how that's made too. So for now we'll leave the wing and continue with something else.